All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of A Founder's Journey into Bitcoin. Today, I'm joined by Leonidas, co-founder and CEO of Or.io, and he's also pioneering attributes. And I am Albert, CEO of Bitcoin Startup Lab. This is the Who's Who and Founder's Journey into Bitcoin interview series, where the Bitcoin community has come together to celebrate innovative and significant achievements on Bitcoin so that we can reinforce and grow the innovation culture on Bitcoin. And so when we say significant achievements on Bitcoin, it means that things that were done for the first time ever on Bitcoin are setting a new record to push forward the innovation frontier on Bitcoin. And this show is brought to you by CryptoSlate. They are a crypto agnostic media platform that brings the latest happenings on Bitcoin to the rest of the crypto world, and the Bitcoin Startup Lab, a top pre-accelerator in the Bitcoin ecosystem, where we help you turn your ideas into investment-ready startups. And before we get started, I'd love to say a big thank you to our teams and all the guest speakers that come together to make this show possible and accelerate the advent of the Bitcoin economy. So this is show number 16. We are on a mission to reach 30 innovators by the end of the year. The time is getting tight. We might have to make a cut at 20, but I'm thrilled to have Leonidas, co-founder and CEO of Or.io, who's pioneering attributes on Ordinals, join us for the 16th Who's Who episode. So hi, Leonidas. How are you doing?
Hey, Albert. Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Always love getting to chat with you.
Yeah, likewise. And I think I think it's safe to say on behalf of the Bitcoin community, thanks for being the longest running show for Ordinals. So it has become an important part of our Bitcoin culture. And also thank you for helping and spearheading attributes on Ordinals and creating sensibility, right, in the rare sat market. And I'd also like to get into Or.io, but before we get into the main event, can we start from the top and maybe understand how you got started even before university days? And did you do any side hustles, or something that sort of showed your entrepreneur spirit at a young age?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't actually think I've talked about this a whole lot, maybe ever publicly before. I like started you can call it a business, but not really. It's like I had a lawnmower and I went around to like 1,000 different houses in my like broader neighborhood. This is like maybe when I was like 15, and just dropped off little pamphlets in all the mailboxes. And then, a few of them called back and were like, yeah, like you can, mow our lawn. So I would drive around on Saturdays for a few years, hitting a bunch of houses and just mowing their lawns and blowing their driveways. So I don't really know, like, that's not like, I'm not sure how that translated exactly into what I'm doing today, but it was cool to like get out there and actually like, earn some money and like do your own thing. You definitely learn, there's definitely like things you learn through just that process, I guess. So yeah, like, lawn mowing is like, I think probably the most stereotypical, like, kind of side hustle you can do as a kid. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed, getting to kind of, I don't know, owning something yourself and owning the outcome is like, it's an important step for people to take, right? Like you don't necessarily always want to be working for other people. It's nice to kind of do your own thing, even if it's, just you and a lawnmower.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, I guess you encapsulate all the basic components of a startup or a business, right? You had to do the marketing. You had to have a product, right, that created value, right? And you have to deliver that service at a quality where people invite you back to reuse your product or service. So I'd say it's good training. I mean, there's an overwhelming number of guest speakers who come on the Who's Who, that have either done lawn mowing, car washing, delivering papers, or some kind of side hustle that required both just hustling and marketing, right? Sales and in addition, providing a service that people wanted when they were teenagers. So yeah, I love starting with that question because we're definitely trying to look for patterns, and hopefully other people have done other side hustles when they're young. Maybe they it helps trigger something in them and they realize like, hey, maybe they have the entrepreneurial gene, so thanks for sharing that with us. Hopefully that's an inspiration to some people. So after 15, you said it for a few years. What was the next side hustle you did?
I don't know if you qualify this as a side hustle, but silly bands were another pretty popular thing. I like there was this period of time, I don't know if this is happening all around the world, but in the US, where these like little silly bands, which were these like cute shaped like animals that you would like have a rubber band shaped in that you would, collect and, wear around your arm. And I don't even, this might have been even before the lawn mowing, to be honest, I can't remember, but I, got really into like trading and, built up a pretty good collection just by like making good trades with people. I always collected Pokemon cards when I was like much younger, collected coins, would go to the flea market and, kind of check out all the different coins here. The guy behind the stand would always have like this amazing story for like pretty much every coin, right? They all have some sort of like interesting narrative or story, and got into collecting through that. So I've always like collecting's not really a side hustle. Like I was probably like, more just like collecting, not to make money, just because these were cool things to have. But I really did, I think those early coin collecting days probably in some way did translate into, okay, this is just collecting digital coins when I like came across Bitcoin back in.
Right. Let me ask a question. How old were you then? What grade were you in?
I mean, coin collecting, second grade, maybe.
Oh
Pokemon
man,
card,
shoot,
second, third,
that's
fourth grade.
hold on. Is that you're saying you're 7?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I was pretty
Oh,
obsessed with like these coin collections, like my coin collection and my Pokemon card collection. I spent like all my time like, doing inventory, like calculating, all the different like cards that I had and like just trying to keep inventory of what I had and like trying to add to the collection.
that's interesting. That's an interesting point. I found a lot of my friends who are successful founders, they tend to understand the value of things at a fairly young age. There's like, for some reason that part, like for other people, the part of their brain that develops maybe other things, right? But I noticed that for like successful founders, the value of things becomes very clear at a younger age. So that's interesting to know. So that's basically 7. Okay. And then when did you collect Pokemon cards?
Yeah, like Pokemon cards. These were like the kind of older, like 1996, 1997, 1998 Pokemon cards more. And then, yeah, like basically coins, like old US coins, like currency from many different countries. It's not like I had this crazy collection. Like to me at the time, I was really young. Like the collection was probably worth like $50. But you can, get a lot of really cool coins for $50, it turns out, right? Like wheat pennies are pretty interesting. I had a bunch of those, and I don't know, like, yeah, it's just
Okay,
it's this fun thing to do where I guess it's not that different from NFT collecting that you would maybe do more as an adult. It's just like the very like baby kind of like initial version of that. And there's of course coin collectors who take it really, really seriously today. And I'm not one of those, but there's a whole world there that went way over my head at the time.
yeah, of course, yeah, you could go really deep in coin collection. But let me ask a question. Which one of those collectibles was the most interactive, being that you had the highest frequency of other people owning a similar collectible, and then you could trade with them?
I wasn't doing too much trading of the Pokemon cards and the coins. It was more kind of just like me building up my collection. I would like, you can, talk to kids at school about it, I guess. But I think Pokemon was like, I think it's like most of the kids collected Yu-Gi-Oh! And I was more interested in collecting
Wow.
like, the older Pokemon cards rather than like the new kind of hot Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff. So like the kids
Why
bringing
was that?
Yu-Gi-Oh! to school. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. I think Pokemon just like seemed just like way cooler to me. Like it was just a neat this neat idea of like catching Pokemon, right? I watched the Pokemon TV show and didn't play the video games, but was into Pokemon. So yeah,
That's
it's an interesting. Maybe Yu-Gi-Oh was like a little older kids than me at the time, I guess.
interesting. Interesting. Okay, so we covered coin collection, Pokemon, the wrist animal wrist bracelets, right? And then also your lawn mowing business. Um, let's go on to the next one, right? What's the you know before you came into ordinals, you were in the Ethereum space. Did you do anything before you got into Web3 between the lawn mowing business and your run in Ethereum?
Well, yes, I don't talk about my personal life a whole lot. I mean, I went to college. I was a pretty big runner. Um, I ended up, leaving college. I dropped out of college and moved out to California and moved into this like hacker house and started teaching myself to code. And at the time I was like, delivering DoorDash on my bike and just like trying to make ends meet month to month. And then, during the nights I would teach myself to code and was able to get a few kind of basic contract jobs and eventually was able to, get some contract jobs in Web3. And then I created some kind of early apps on the App Store in the crypto space. This is all back in like 2017. And yeah, basically just played around with Ethereum and all the fun things happening at the time and just got totally sucked in during that. The rise of Ethereum in like 2017 was like a super, super special moment for the people who kind of remember that. It was the feeling was just, I don't know, it's very similar to the Ordinals feeling of just people were like super excited about just this incredible opportunity that we get to all be part of and help shape. So like I got to see CryptoPunks come out. Of course I thought they were stupid, didn't buy them, but I played CryptoKitties and I did dig CryptoKitties. Like this idea of the ERC 721 standard definitely clicked with me, and I got to check out OpenSea when it came out, and just, I don't know, getting to like tinker and play with a bunch of stuff, at the time was definitely, what helped me kind of have a passion for this space. And just, I don't know, being able to interact in a space where you do whatever you want to, really. There's no, there's no middleman, right? Like this idea of you just like playing this game with other people through a smart contract with CryptoKitties, like that was a really fun idea to me. And I kind of wish gaming, I would have assumed gaming would have taken off a lot more, maybe since I played CryptoKitties in 2017. I think there's still hope, but we haven't made as much progress on that front. But the idea of NFTs and then DeFi definitely really took off, 2020, 2021, and got really doubled down on crypto at that point in time, and kind of fully immersed myself back into the space. I had gone and worked for just large tech companies and a startup in San Francisco, kind of in the in-between bear market part of the crypto, like 2018, 2019, 2020 days.
Oh, interesting. So let me start from the top there. Did I hear you correctly? You're working, doing DoorDash to make ends meet while you're learning how to code.
Yeah, dude, it's funny. Like
That's a hustle.
I'm like sleeping in a house with like bunk beds. There's like 6 people per room, like literally just biking around.
So it's like a hostel. It's like a hostel, but like a hacker house.
It's a hostel, yeah. Like there were bed bugs. It was a complete disaster. Like, but yeah, I did go through all that and like, basically moved out to California and was like, I've got like $3,000 worth of Bitcoin, and I'm just gonna like see if I can teach myself the code and like, end up becoming a software developer and hopefully building, something in the space someday. So, here we are, I guess 6 years later, and kind of following, I guess, that initial vision a little bit.
All right, and then you hit like the 2017, the beginnings of Ethereum, and on the side.
Well, I was actually like a Bitcoin maxi, right? Like I held Bitcoin. I thought Ethereum was like really stupid, just very obvious bag bias. And then I had a friend buy ETH at like $12 and tell me, and this is a friend I respected, and I think I ended up buying some ETH at like $70 and, got to ride that wave. So I would say the most the most beneficial thing you can do to like a Bitcoin maxi to convince them that, maybe there's other things other than Bitcoin that are also cool, like other than the BTC currency, is to just like get people to actually try and use these things. Because as soon as you have, a rare Pepe or an inscription or a rare sat in your wallet, all of a sudden you're on that team. It's just like, this is how incentive alignment works, right? I was a, Bitcoin maxi and hated Ethereum. Like the only reason, like if I'm being honest with myself, was because, Bitcoin is what I held and I didn't hold ETH, and I was seeing this thing going up and feeling like jealous that like I wasn't getting to participate in this upside. So finally, I was just like, the logical here is there is a pretty interesting technological innovation with these smart contracts. I'll move like 20% of my Bitcoin into ETH, and I think that was the logical thing to do. And then I as a developer, there wasn't a whole lot to do on Bitcoin, and there was tons to do on Ethereum. So, ended up being more attracted to that space.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And you said you're working for some tech startups. I mean, all the while you're on the side, you're still playing around and basically becoming a super user on Ethereum, right?
I mean, I've built a bunch of random stuff. Maybe if I get doxxed someday, I can talk about it. Nothing like super crazy, but I've I've hacked together a lot of side projects over the past like 5 or 6 years.
Can you share, like, not the name, but like what the categories are? Are they like
Like
NFT,
crypto stuff, social
DeFi,
stuff,
social stuff? Okay.
design stuff, just all kinds of stuff. Like go to Product Hunt and just scroll through people's side projects. It's things like that, right?
Yeah, and you're doing like this like as like in your free time when you're working full time for those startups.
Right. I definitely, liked when I got to decide what I wanted to work on. Like I enjoyed that more than, working for other people probably.
Yeah, no, as every single entrepreneur and founder like finds out, right? It's like we there's like this innate passion to sort of imagine something that's really cool and to want to build it.
Yeah, I mean, as a software developer, most software developers are in this old code base, fixing, this infinite pile of bugs that are coming in, maintaining like all of this crappy old tech that's like so outdated and nobody's talking about. And then there's like all this new, like sick bleeding edge stuff happening. Of course, you're like on your nights and weekends, you're working on the cool stuff, right? You're not like, I think there's a lot of people, and it's an important job that software developers need to maintain all these code bases. It's what makes the world function, but it's not exactly like there's interesting problems to solve, right? But the actual tech itself is like a decade old. It's not as exciting to work with, like the kind of, you can do this like way more efficiently today with like a new tech stack. And it's much more fun to be working with the bleeding edge stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're in Bitcoin now, but that must have been, I mean, so you start writing smart contracts, you became a super user, right? You mentioned in 2018, 19, and was it 2020 that you were still working at startups in San Francisco? Like what
At that time, I was working in a larger tech company and worked there until September of 2021.
Okay, so between 2021, that's roughly 2 years, right? I mean, we just passed, yeah. So what happened in this last 2 years? And you left, like obviously you left that company, and then let's walk us through like the highlights on how you eventually got into the ordinal space.
So high level, 2020, late 2020 rolls around. It's starting to get on my radar. People are pinging me that, NFTs are looking like they're going to become a thing again. I had kind of checked out of the NFT kind of scene for the prior 2 years for the most part. And it was just this kind of clear feeling that we're probably going to have just yet another one of these massive bull runs. And it's probably just starting to kick off, and it's, we're timed up pretty nicely with the 4-year cycles. So I took all the money that I had saved up and just from working as a software developer for the past few years, put it into the two like oldest NFTs that I was aware of, which was a CryptoPunk and a Founder CryptoKitty, and then some ETH and a few DeFi tokens, and just started getting more and more into NFTs. And basically I think around March of 2021, I was listening to this Clubhouse space, this Clubhouse room, and they were talking about rediscovering this old smart contract from 2017 called the Mooncat Rescue Smart Contract. And it turns out there were these 24,000 cats that, had just been sitting there in this old smart contract that were, at the time, it was the third smart contract that I was aware of in 2017 that had NFTs in it. So my thesis was already pretty strong on, 2017 early Ethereum NFTs. To me, that was always just way cooler than the kind of newer market that I just didn't understand at all. So I, listened to that space, and I was a little too late. By the time I tuned into the space, they'd already all been claimed, and I just kind of sat there and like put two and two together in my head that, okay, this project, this smart contract is from 2017, and it has, a bunch of NFTs in it. The market cap is $0, and 12 hours into this kind of rescue, the market cap goes to $100 million. And I'm like, that's incredible. There's value sitting on chain to be found, right? And I got off the space, I got off the clubhouse room, I hopped on my computer, and I just looked for like 3 hours straight for old NFT projects. And I came across this project called Digital Zones of Immaterial Pictorial Sensibility on like this. It was like the 7th page of like a really custom Google search. And it wasn't like called NFTs, right? It was more like digital art on Ethereum. And yeah, ended up
page on a Google search. Geez. So you're on a mission.
I was on a mission. I wanted to see if I could find old smart contracts that had, NFTs in them, and was able to do that. And, was able to collect a few of those, and those ended up, being a, really interesting collection. And there ended up being even more smart contracts from 2017 that, a bunch of people were, really into. There was this historical NFT community starting to grow at the time. And people, basically NFTs are going through price discovery in a like pretty rapid, 6 to 12 month period of time. So I was in the more historical early NFT researching, collecting group of people, and yeah, basically got to amass a collection of, NFTs from like hundreds of old smart contracts, NFTs from Namecoin, NFTs from Bitcoin in the early counterparty days. And yeah, I still have that historical NFT collection. And I basically became Leonidas. Like I created the Leonidas account in, I think like August. I switched to like being Leonidas in August of 2021. And yeah, basically now I guess like I'm like, the technical term is like an NFT influencer. But yeah, basically through all of that, I met Casey in like the next summer. And because he was coming into the historical NFT Discord pitching, rare sats as being the oldest NFTs ever, because he had made sats non-fungible. And if you believe sats are non-fungible when looking through this lens, it means that theoretically, like the first sats from 2009 are technically the oldest NFTs. And I don't really think that like technically holds too much merit necessarily. Like I don't think it's quite the same as an NFT in that sense, because it wasn't initially conceived to be an NFT and wasn't technically an NFT at the time, but it was nonetheless like super interesting. So I had a, call with Casey, and just got to grill him on a bunch of different things about this, and realized like, wow, this guy's like super smart. He's got a pretty legit protocol. And if he creates, some sort of interface for people to interact with this, like it's probably going to be pretty interesting. And yeah, here we are, like Ordinals got released earlier this year, and I got the, check out inscriptions, like sub 100, and, met like Trevor on a space when there were like, 1,000 inscriptions, and have just been, full steam ahead Ordinals, pretty much ever since then. I saw there was clearly something pretty awesome happening here.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a bunch of questions that pop into my mind. Like first, I'd like to point out that, it seems like you've been in the Web3 space for like a full 2 cycles now, right? Like 2 4-year cycles.
Yeah. So I guess 2013, my computer science teacher, taught me about Bitcoin. And then when the price went down in 2014, I picked up a few Bitcoin, and then just kind of held that. Didn't really understand too much. It was more just like speculative investment, but kind of got to watch just this brutal, check the prices every day from 2014 to like, 2016 was pretty tough. Like it was bouncing around $200, $300 And, like there's literally like, we're talking the market cap of Bitcoin is, like $4 billion or something. Like the space is non-existent, right? There's like a few, like that's the size of, like, there's a lot of, go look at an L1 that has a $4 billion market cap. Like that was the size of the entire crypto space at the time, right? There wasn't a whole lot really going on there. And yeah, it came out of that. And I think you got to really hand it to Vitalik with Ethereum for just starting this just whole renaissance of blockchain technology. Isn't just currency, it's all these other applications. And the general purpose smart contracts was just a huge innovation that, unleashed all of these ICOs and craziness. So yeah, it's been interesting going through a few of these now. Like, the bear market like doesn't faze me as much just because I've kind of watched the same thing happen over and over. And it's like, it's kind of like, of course, we're in a brutal bear market. Of course, everyone's capitulating, I guess. But the great thing about that is there's a lot of people who've also been through these before, and they, have this just, almost delusional conviction that like, in my head, and this is probably irrational, but there's like this 99.99% chance that in a year and a half from now, we have a massive bull run again, and everything in the space goes up like 10 to 20x, right? And I'm not saying that's, healthy to like have delusional conviction on that, but that's how it's always been. And I think it has to do with just the market psychology of just this completely free market that is super volatile. So yeah, I don't think like I was definitely like a lot more nervous than maybe in the earlier kind of bear markets. And then this one, just I'm not really sweating it too much. It's almost kind of boring or a little too predictable.
Okay, yeah, that's actually my next question, right? So from these, you've seen two cycles, right? Before, I mean, I wanted to sort of get some insights. I think the audience is curious too. If it follows the same pattern as the previous bear and bull run cycle for Web3 crypto, like how much longer do we have to wait for this one? But before you answer that, I'm just curious. Did you sell any NFTs at the height of the bull run? It's just it's basically in beginning of 2022, right? End of 2021.
I mean, yeah, not enough. Ironically, it's really interesting. Like I would have been way better off probably never creating this Leonidas account. I think people kind of assume NFT kind of people in the space, like influencers, make their money by like leveraging their like, ability to do like paid promotion and releasing things and stuff. And I've never released anything, and pretty much made my money in the space before I was Leonidas. So, basically everything I collected after that point, I basically was like learning on the fly as like this 25-year-old. You can basically only buy and never sell anything. Like that is like the kind of general rule for an NFT influencer. And I've kind of like more so learned that. But yeah, I mean, basically I've, held that entire collection, and I've ridden everything down to like basically the bottom of this bear market. And definitely should have taken a lot more off the table. Like looking back, yeah, like I definitely should have set aside a lot more money. I shouldn't be so illiquid in JPEGs, but this is
Though you have the responsibility, right, of holding your good name up as an influencer.
Yeah, I mean, after you tweet about something, right, it's kind of like you just basically realize like, and I really do understand, like you just probably don't sell like after you tweeted about it. So if you are going to sell something, just don't ever talk about it. And that's pretty much the rule. I think, you kind of need to follow.
Yeah. Good point. So, hey, everyone in the audience, we're about the halfway point. We're going to take another 15 minutes to dive into how the United Spirit adding attributes, what it means for rare sats, and also dive into or.io. So if you guys hear anything that piques your interest, you guys want to raise your hand, we are going to go into a Q&A session in about 15-20 minutes here. So get ready for that. So, all right. But before we jump into that, I'm still very curious. Right? I think you posted the other day, less than a week ago, with like 35 million inscriptions, right? So, and Danny from OCM posted that the growth rate for inscriptions is faster than what the NFT market had grown at in the beginning, right? So yeah, I know it's not exactly, my point is like the market force is not exactly the same from every 4-year cycle, but what do you think is similar, and and because we're sort of we've the activity has definitely gone down, but there's still a lot of activity, right? But how long do you think we have? If if you're taking experience from the previous cycles, how much longer are we going to? Is it going to take to bottom out and then come back out of it and then go into like a bull run?
So yeah, to answer this question, I think we have to be super honest that the reason the market cap for the space right now is like $1 trillion has nothing to do with like real utility. It's like mostly still like 95% of it has to do with people speculating on maybe future utility or future, store of value or future use cases. But a lot of the space is people basically being angel investors speculating on things. And in that world, the psychology of the market just completely drives everything. So, when everybody's FOMOing in, it just goes to really insane heights. And then when everybody's capitulating, you dive really low and you just have this absurd, difference between like the energy a year and a half ago and the energy now is just very, very different. So we've seen this play out like, 2013 is a peak, bull run, just completely crazy for Bitcoin. And then like 2015, like 2014, 2015, 2016 are pretty brutal. 2016, you're starting to get some pulse back. 2017 is just a crazy year. And then you repeat the same thing. It's like 2018 was, super brutal. 2019, just so brutal. ETH hits like $89, right? Like this is, absolute, like people are basically like believing Ethereum's completely toast at $89, right? It was pretty bad vibes. And then of course you come out of it and all these builders that get funded the previous cycle are building and working really hard during the bear market. And then it just turns out, I think it's mostly a function of people talk about happenings, but I think it's really just a function of like, how long does it take? You give 1,000 startups, $1 million or a few $1,000,000 or something, have them build during, a bear market. It takes them a year or two to really ship like products and like iterate to the point where the ideas that people were funding and very, very speculatively thinking might be the future. It takes us several years for people to actually build that into a practical product that, meets users' needs. And that usually seems to be like roughly a 4-year cycle of that happening. And I think it doesn't help that we've had these 4-year cycles like quite a few times now. So there's also this self-fulfilling prophecy of, people just think the psychology is everybody thinks this is going to be in 4-year cycles and thus it becomes 4-year cycles. I genuinely don't think it has anything to do with the economics of like less Bitcoin, being, less sell pressure from miners of like their, Bitcoin rewards. Like, I don't think it has anything to do with that. That might have initially been what kickstarted the psychology, but yeah, it's a combination of self-fulfilling prophecy and builders having to just actually take all that capital that flowed in during 2021 and turn it into practical products that actually, people want to use on the internet. So we're in like, the 2019 phase right now. Like this is, if you're mapping these things over each other, if you were here in 2019, around, October 2019, that's the spot that we're at in this. So we still got a little bit like we're talking, DeFi summer is still 9 months off, and that's like really the first real pulse of energy coming back to the space would be like 9 months from now. So again, this is all completely made up bogus information.
Yeah, no, well, no, this is what I was asking, right? If we had to base it on the last cycle, then okay, that's insightful. So another 9 months. I tend to roughly agree with that timing, just running the Bitcoin Startup Lab and look, just as seeing what the founders are building through our program, and even like this cohort when people are applying. Yeah, I'd say in about 9 months from now, some of these DeFi products are going to be, like you said, user production level ready. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's roughly right, man. I hope that the economy also supports that at that time. But let's go back to let's get into the attributes, right? Thanks for sharing that, by the way. It shows that we're already halfway past this bear market. But
yeah, we're through. I think we're through probably the really thick of the brutality, like the FTX and Luna stuff, like all of that mess led us to like bottom in certain respects earlier than maybe we would have in prior bull markets. But yeah, we've just been kind of like NFTs have been kind of slowly going down, but the crypto space as a whole, I think bottomed when ETH hit like $800 and Bitcoin went down to like maybe, I don't know, I think it was like 13,000. I think that was really the bottom. And having that bottom, I think, behind us from the whole crypto perspective has actually been kind of nice. Of course, it was brutal for people at the time who, 3 months earlier were riding high, but instead of slowly going down for a long time, we bottomed super fast. And now, I mean, Bitcoin, ETH are like, double the low point there, which is like a pretty nice spot to be in during a bear market, to be honest.
Yeah, no, glad to hear that it's the worst is behind us. I tend to agree with that. I mean, we never know what the future holds, but if it's just judging from past cycles, it does feel like the worst is behind us. In any event, the real builders come out during this time anyhow. Historically speaking, I mean, in 2008, we had Airbnb and Uber come out of the ashes of that financial crisis. If you look at 1975, what two companies came out of that recession? Well, one was Apple, the other one was Microsoft. But actually, these are not outliers. This is actually the rule of thumb, right? 2/3 of publicly traded companies come out from recessions. But yet, if you look at the percentage of time that recessions take up in the US economy, it's less than 20%. So that means 10x more powerful companies come out of recessions and bear markets than during the bull market. So speaking of which, right, let's get into this Satrabees and Or.io. You're building during the bear market. Hats off to you. And but you weren't always when you started Bitcoin, you went to Ethereum. You met Casey last summer, right? If I heard correctly.
Well, I guess it would be 2 summers ago now, but yeah.
2 summers. Well, 2 summers. Okay, so all right, and then you made the transition into basically all Bitcoin earlier this year, right? February or January. Is that
correct? I mean, I still hold a lot of Ethereum assets. I didn't sell everything, but yeah, I have been focusing full time on specifically this like ordinal space.
So, all right. So it was okay. So just so everyone in the audience, including myself, have our bearings, right? So if it was 2 summers ago. So okay. So a year and a half after you met Casey, like he actually launches this thing, and it just takes off, right? It's almost like it's seemingly from outsiders' point of view, overnight success. But you saw him struggle for like a year and a half to get this off the ground. Can you share a little bit about that? And then eventually, what was the tipping point for you to say, all right, I'm going to basically spend all my time in Bitcoin now and minimize the time I'm in Ethereum? What was that? Can you share what happened there and what was what was the turning point there?
So there were people that were closer to Casey than I was. I was more like this kind of observer of something that I thought was interesting that was happening. As an NFT, collector, you're constantly just looking for interesting things that are happening. This is like pretty much what people do all day in the crypto space. They're scrolling through Twitter. They're just looking for interesting things that are happening that they might want to invest in, right? And it was brutal. Like there were just constantly interesting things that I could deploy capital every week during 2021. And by the time it's summer of 2022, I mean, I'm really struggling. I haven't bought anything for like 3 months. Like literally, I haven't bought or sold anything in 3 months because there's just nothing coming across my Twitter feed that seems remotely interesting. And then, Casey comes along and it's just like, wow, like this is actually a pretty novel thing. I had already had a thesis around Bitcoin. I held a bunch of and still hold a bunch of these early counterparty NFTs. And, basically I think that the main thing I tried to convey to Casey was like, dude, everything you're saying is like actually like super legit. This all makes sense, but people are super, super lazy. So unless you like serve it up to them on a platter, you just can't get there's not enough devs like Casey out there to prop something up and make it happen. I was like, you need to create some sort of like command line interface that people can like in under an hour kind of get set up using this protocol. Otherwise, it's just another idea that somebody has. Even though I think it's actually a legit idea and like pretty dope that you can buy and sell like rare sats. That's like pretty cool. Like people can sat hunt. He described all these things in, his writing before I even met him that summer, and articulated it, more to me on a Twitter space, and I think like about a year ago. And he, ended up just being very kind of thoughtful and developed this protocol and took his time. And Raph was working with him and eventually figured out the inscriptions aspect. He basically, didn't just have the innovation of, first in, first out tracking of Satoshis with ordinal theory, but also introduced inscriptions, which is like basically the second most popular use case on Bitcoin, is using it as a database now. So, the protocol comes out in, January of this year, and he releases it with the command line interface that was, unless you're like super, technical nerd, you would need at least some sort of command line interface for something to have some sort of opportunity to have a viral moment and really get the shine. And he released that product. Like he packaged it all in a really nice way and had the Explorer ready and gave it enough of a chance to, have a few hundred people try it out. And it turns out there was something there. The idea, obviously did have something behind it. And it turns out that, even larger than just this idea of tracking sats and, inscriptions, he was tapping into this much deeper, there's just a lot of people who love Bitcoin. And like, if you figured out a way to do Web3 on Bitcoin, they would have been like super excited about that. And Casey tapped into that energy. And of course, that's why you have people like Michael Saylor, CZ, but even Vitalik, like, kind of saying like good things and praising ordinals, because everybody loves Bitcoin. Like everybody who's been around here a long time is a huge fan of Bitcoin and isn't really a fan of maybe the current culture on Bitcoin. But Bitcoin itself and what it stands for, I think means a lot to a lot of people, like more so than anything else in this space. So I think Casey tapped into that because these people would love to be on Bitcoin if they could. There just wasn't any way that they were aware of to do NFTs on Bitcoin or do DeFi on Bitcoin or do, any of these interesting things. And Casey opened that door for a lot of people. And that's, I think, the larger legacy there is really, he's the one who opened that door, not only from a technical perspective, but a cultural perspective. Before ordinals, I think there wasn't really a group of people that was large enough to really create a safe environment where you're, a developer experimenting on Bitcoin. You don't want to be walking on eggshells when you talk to people. It's like absurd. You should just be able to like try tons of dope stuff, ship the product, people use it. If it fails, that's fine. Move to the kind of next thing. Most of these things are like really, bad innovations and nobody cares about it. But occasionally somebody like Casey comes along and does something really neat. And Casey showed that, you can use Bitcoin to do this Web3 stuff. And there's a culture of people who are going to support you against this like kind of, mob of like laser eye maxis who might harass you, which is what would have happened maybe during 2017 through the like 2022 essentially.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is a turning point for the Bitcoin culture. I mean, one of the key takeaways I got from that was that it's a good thing that he listened to your user experience suggestion to make it easier to use, right? But so
I would have probably done it anyways, to be honest, but I definitely tried to convey, like, I have seen so many of like really cool old smart contracts with NFTs in them, and people are too lazy to go to either stand. Like,
no, you're right. I mean,
until they get wrapped and put on OpenSea.
For sure.
You have to make a user experience that people will use. Otherwise, people are just super lazy, is just the reality, right?
Let me ask you a question. How did you know it was a good idea back then?
I mean, Casey's a pretty smart dude, and like you don't come across people that are thinking like this first principles at this level from first principles. So, Bitcoin taking, this currency, turning into non-fungible tokens, that was like just objectively, that was a way more interesting idea than like the 23rd metaverse product or something. So it was just different. And I'm a value investor, a contrarian, so I'm always looking for stuff like this. And yeah, this just instantly, it was pretty instantly obvious that this dude was onto something. And I even have some messages I sent to a friend where I was like, dude, we need to set up a rare sat hunting operation. Like we could be like the first ones to do this. Of course, I didn't end up doing it. But yeah, I was pretty much, after the Twitter space specifically, I was pretty much sold that, yeah, like I want to collect these things. There's probably a lot of people like me who would share that psychology. This would organically have traction. And we're starting to see like Magic Eden release their rare sat marketplace product today. Like we're seeing a lot of that early, we're seeing a lot of the early ideas that Casey had and that vision just kind of playing out over the last year, almost to a T. And like the sat hunting specifically, like Casey explained to me that people are going to be, sending Bitcoin to Binance, withdrawing it until all the Bitcoin in the world has been sifted through for rare sats. And I was, thinking like, dude, you're a little ahead of yourself on all this. Like, I don't think people are going to be sifting through all the Bitcoin. Of course, I have people, telling me in my DMs, there's probably like 6 people who've told me, yeah, I've sifted through over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin now. So we're seeing exactly this play out. And Casey, Casey predicted it like
what a visionary.
Very much a visionary, very, very thoughtful, smart dude that understood pretty much all aspects of this and has been able to predict most of it pretty well.
So yeah, he's not only like a tech guru, but he understands human nature too. And how does all this lead up to you creating attributes? Can you share with the audience what that is and where or.io comes in? And after that, let's open up the floor for questions. So if anyone else in the audience wants to ask questions, please raise your hand and we'll bring you up. So yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah. So
you're hitting
I had a debate with Casey and Adam McBride about like what kinds of sats would people want to collect. And I was definitely an advocate for like people will want to collect cool numbers like palindromes. And I think we were all in agreement that people would probably want to collect, old sats or, sats from interesting transactions. And then Casey was really, adamant that people want to collect the first sat in a block. And there were just these different kind of, categories of interesting stats that people might want to collect. And like we were talking about this like over a year ago now, just completely as an idea. And then Ordinals comes out, it's all of a sudden super popular. People are all completely focused on the inscriptions. It's like nobody read the handbook and like got the memo about the rare and exotic sat part. So, here I am with Zach. We created this Ordinal Explorer where you're able to view all the inscriptions on Bitcoin. It's like a, Google Images for Bitcoin or something like this. And, everybody's ignoring the rare and exotic sats. And like, there's like literally like 3 people, like Nolish and like 2 other people in the world that give a shit about the rare exotic sat stuff. And I like hopped on a call with Dolish and was like, we should add some like discoverability. Like it's probably an interesting feature to know if your inscription is on a cool sat. Like maybe it's not worth anything, but if your inscription is on a sat that Satoshi owned, that's probably something that might be cool to know. So I basically sat down and, Zach and I came up with this idea of attributes where it's a combination of the word sat and attribute. So it's like trying to like people in the NFT space call the different traits and attributes of an NFT like an attribute. So it's taking that and applying it to a sat. So if a sat has an interesting property, like Satoshi owned it, or like it's a palindrome number, or it's from the Bitcoin pizza transaction, these are interesting attributes that we want to be able to index and, associate with sats. So yeah, we were the first ones to basically take all of these different categories. At the time, it was only these 5 different categories in addition to Casey's rarity. And we indexed those. I did some research to figure out like which blocks Satoshi mined and also spent, and was able to, put out the first product for people to explore inscriptions on these sats. Like we were the first ones to index that. And we created this kind of basic coloring scheme and icons that, have more or less become kind of this loose standard. And people refer to them as like, a block 9 sat, like a pizza sat. I think it's like, this is all pretty logical. This would have played out this way. I think we were just the first ones to really, do it and try to make the standard. And all these names have stuck to this day. Like, well, like I put a lot of thought into like that, the block 78 sats that were mined by Hal Finney, the second oldest block reward that's in circulation, made the color of that icon of that attribute red. And I made it the exact color of the hue of his shirt in this iconic picture of him running when he was much younger, right? That's the kind of iconic Hal Finney picture.
Oh, I see.
So basically created this,
I was wondering where the colors come
standard.
from.
Sorry, say it again.
I was wondering where those colors are coming from.
Yeah, I could go into detail on maybe more of this stuff. It might bore people, but bottom line was you need to create instead of it just being this loose idea that like people are talking about and like Nolish might have been tweeting about. You need to like categorize it into a specific thing where there's a clear line. I'm not a fan of when I hear people talking about these different potential attribute categories, and there's not clarity. Like there needs to be a rule that is,
Yeah.
mathematical and programmatical, that like this is the exact sats where it starts and ends. Like this is the cutoff, this is the qualification for this sat. And like people do these Silk Road sats now, and I'm like, what does that mean? What does Silk Road sat mean? Like there are, a third of the Bitcoin in circulation has been through Silk Road. There are like 4 large moments where governments seized, sats from Silk Road. And that name just doesn't mean anything to me. And if you ask people, they would say, well, it's this, or this, but nobody has the same necessarily name there. So I think you do have to
Yeah.
probably
I would
categorize.
consider that as very rare.
Yeah, I mean, you need to be thoughtful about how you categorize these things. So I was like, we're gonna kind of create these categories that I think are naturally the categories that should exist, and they're a clear asset, and you can, see that if your inscription is on them or not. And people are now buying and selling these things and collecting them. So yeah, I think it's very important that attributes you're very thoughtful about how you kind of implement this, because these things do stick once you create them. And I think you don't want to be too loosey-goosey, just throwing this word like Silk Road sats around. I see people say that, and I'm just like, this doesn't have any meaning to me. Like there is no way that in 5 years there's like a category called, Silk Road sats. Like it's not going to be a category, because that name doesn't imbue any meaning. Like you could add to that name and say like, Silk Road, first auction by the FBI sats or something like this. But yeah, like when you say
You're right. This is
yeah,
really important, right? To keep people from like either getting scammed or like buying sats that are not actually rare.
if there's not, well, if you don't know, like if there cannot be an exact supply of the thing, then that's probably problematic as this attribute category, in my opinion, right? Like there might be a ton of Bitcoin pizza sats, but we know the exact sat ranges of those Bitcoin pizza sats, and I can tell you the exact supply. And I think that's an important characteristic that when you're trading these things and collecting them, that matters. The reason we don't have Halfini, like we were going to do a Halfini attribute, right? Like a Fini, similar to the Nakamoto's attribute. The reason we didn't do that is because the research of the blocks that Hal mined is only about half done. I talked to the guy who is like the leading researcher on this, and he said, yeah, like somebody needs to pick up my work and finish it. So we're not going to create a attribute category where, in the future, some sat could have been a Halfini sat that like we weren't able to index. And then, there's some earlier inscription on that sat that we just failed to index. So yeah, I think it's very important that all of the sats that are in that attribute category before it becomes like an official thing. Otherwise, I don't know. It's really hard to trade something with not knowing the supply, right?
Yeah, and you put a lot of thought into like the palindrome one is like the mirror image, and you use a butterfly. I think that's very fitting. So thank you for pouring your heart and soul into it.
Thank
But
you for appreciating. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. It's really cool. I mean, we have to be able to categorize things. Otherwise, it's hard to understand the meaning and value of things. But I mean, like, okay, so you spend all this time to create the system, but people aren't just going to adopt it. But I see it being adopted by like Magic Eden and some pretty big players. Like, how did you, like, how much time did that cost you? To get them up to speed on this, or was it just like they just did it themselves?
Well, so it's interesting. We released the rare and exotic like attributes exploring on Ord.io in May, and it was like almost instantly a hit. Like instantly, everybody was like, "This is awesome." They were going, checking out if their inscriptions were on an interesting sat, and I think just, yeah, organically there was something there that even, was more successful than I had imagined. People would care about it even more than I thought they would. So through that, I think, everybody's seeing like this is like an interesting thing. And, of course, I want it to be a standard that everybody follows. So, people would reach out to me and I would give them, like the different ranges for like pizza sats and, share with people like how to do it. And, people can figure it out on their own too. They like people can figure it out without talking to me, but it was just wanting to make sure like there was some sort of kind of reasonable standard so that we're, being good stewards of what is essentially a brand new asset class. And, for the most part, different integrations from explorers and marketplaces have, stayed pretty close to the icons and the colors and the names. And that's been like pretty cool to see. And there's even people that have, added on, even more attributes that are pretty cool. And we're going to be, taking what they did and, adding them into Or.io. So it's now this pretty cool collaborative thing where there's people, experimenting with these different categories and, seeing what the market likes and cares about and seeing what the market doesn't care about.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a side note. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for putting on that work and making a great system that is becoming basically the generally accepted system, right, for rare sats. Speaking of rare sats, this is a tangent. I'm only going to spend like 30 seconds on it, but hey, we need to get your advice, right? Because we are launching a ordinals collection, but only for our mentors like yourself, our speakers, investors in our ecosystem that have contributed to the Bitcoin Startup Lab. Right now, there's a little over 100, and then all the startup teams that were able to make it through our 3-month gauntlet and get to demo day, right? So it's going to be a private collection. But yeah, we definitely want to pick the right rare sat to inscribe it on. So I'm going to pick your brain about that soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm a fan of attribute layering. I like, to me, it's not necessarily how rare, like I guess the supply and scarcity is obviously important, but to me, it's more like how cool of a narrative is that? Like, if a sat was a pizza sat and it's a palindrome number, like that's interesting to me, right? Like the layering of different attributes is probably the kind of coolest area that I'm interested in. I think, a Satoshi Satoshi, a Nakamoto sat that Satoshi had mined and held, and, that's also a palindrome. Like that's like pretty badass to me. So I would say like, those aren't even like necessarily super expensive. So, you can kind of figure out the supply. Obviously, there's a lot of Nakamoto sats.
Yeah, no,
There's a lot less
that helps.
palindrome.
There are some numbers that we want from the palindrome one that do have a narrative.
Yeah. I mean, 3-digit palindrome. They're like, dude, there's so many. I would say just like find the like coolest stats you can at a reasonable price that have like an interesting narrative and inscribe on it. Like whatever kind of resonates with you. I think there's definitely something to the Hal Finney and Satoshi sats that they held. There's something like super cool about that. So I think like having your collection, inscribed on those is just, even if it doesn't end up adding any value or anything, I think that's just like really cool. Like if you can choose to have your, inscription on a sat that Satoshi held, like that is, just objectively like super cool.
Yeah, no, I'll say, yeah, definitely. Okay, but enough of that about that. We're going to have a different X Spaces just for that, right around the corner. But let's go back. So you created this awesome system that's saving people so much time, attributes. You're spearheading that. A lot of people have contributed to it. Where does Or.io link to all this? And then after that, we have Dogfather up here with his hand up for a question.
Awesome. Yeah, so at Or.io, we're like super focused on our Explorer product, right? Like we are an ordinals aware Bitcoin Explorer. So that means exploring not only inscriptions, but also rare and exotic sats. So, we're cooking up some cool stuff in the rare exotic sat category with attributes that I'm hoping we'll be able to reveal pretty soon. But also we've integrated these social features into the product that have been really awesome. So if anybody who's been to Or.io, you connect your wallet, you can start upvoting inscriptions. If an inscription gets enough upvotes, it'll show on our homepage. And then we released a few weeks ago the ability to reply to inscriptions. So there's now a like conversation happening under every inscription. So taking all of these, files on Bitcoin and then turning them into these interactive pieces of social content. It's a, kind of an experiment that we're running that I think we're going to keep pushing on. And I think there's some more interesting social features we can kind of roll out in that regard. So pushing on the social area, pushing on the rare and exotic stats area.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Let's take Dogfather's question, and then after that, I'd like to learn more about who your strategic partners and who you'd like to invite into the fold to make this like a huge success. But first, Dogfather, your hands up. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for having me up. Hey Leo, hey Albert. A bit.
No, you just cut out. Can you hear us? Leo, did it cut out
Oh,
for?
I can hear you. I can't hear Dogefather.
Yeah, I can't hear. Did you hear him in the beginning?
I heard him for like 2 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So
All right, so let me try it again without my headphones. Is that better now?
Yes,
I
much better.
yeah.
Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, big props, Leo, to you and Zach for building Auto.io. I think most of us are using that every day, so really love that platform. And yeah, just would be super cool to know. I mean, you're like builders, but this is like a non-profit website for the moment. So what are your plans for the future? I mean, in terms of like, what is the business model of the website? It's more like, I mean, what's your runway? What are your plans? That would be super interesting to know.
Yeah, it's a great question. We haven't really focused on, maybe this is being like bad business person, but we haven't really focused on like trying to make money, or like we've had lots of opportunities over the past like 6 months to, do partnerships and like, basically have, revenue streams. And we've just decided to focus on just being, a really good explorer and maybe worrying about how we're going to make money in the future. So yeah, there's like lots of ideas, like, people have ideas that we could, be an infrastructure product where our backend is this API that people could use and they could maybe pay us, and we could be more of like an Infura. People, obviously, use us and they're like, can I, buy inscriptions on or.io? Like that's definitely a path that we could go in. There's some potentially interesting, things around subscriptions. There's various ways you can definitely generate revenue. I think the real opportunities we've had over the last 6 months was basically just us turning down opportunities to kind of like tap into other people's APIs and, take maybe a cut of like, an inscription fee, or, maybe pointing to other marketplaces or something like this. And we've just decided we're going to kind of stay exclusively or.io.
Excellent. Dogfather, you have a follow-up question on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love that approach, Leo. I mean, this is really like pretty cool, because I mean, it's way better to first have a cool product out there before, making money. So then the more you can wait and the more you're established and the more functions you have, the better in the long term, if you have the funds, right, to pay the devs and everything, the run costs. So really looking forward to what you're building. I'm a big fan. I'm also trying to build something like a social layer on Bitcoin, a bit more on chain, and probably we will have maybe some collab in the future. Really looking forward to what we are building.
Yeah, Dogefather, I definitely respect the Friends protocol, and definitely maybe when we have a few more engineers in the future, could more kind of look into what an integration there might look like.
Yeah, speaking on topic of strategic partnerships, who are the ideal strategic partners of or.io?
Well, there's this partner called Zach and a partner called Leonidas. We haven't really like officially like kind of done like partnerships with people like in any sort of like official capacity. Like I would say there's lots of collections where they're inscribing their collection and they'll like message me and be like, hey, I just inscribed this, I'm letting you know first. And then or.io account is kind of this kind of like, we tweet out like interesting on-chain events that are happening. So we'll break the news on lots of, I don't know, I just see like cool things when I'm scrolling through or.io, and I'll tweet about it from that account. And when somebody like inscribes something for the first time, or a big collection that people are anticipating gets inscribed, we'll tweet that out. So have a great relationship with, a lot of the different collections in the space and their founders. and then have, obviously through the Ordinal show and just, a lot of people use Ord.io and, just being a collaborative, trying to be a collaborative company in the space, like, working with, Magic Eden, Ordinal's wallet, just a bunch of people to kind of make sure that, attributes are kind of being done across the board and like somewhat sort of a decent standard. And I think we've done a decent job at achieving that. And I think a lot of credit to all the other builders for, trying to stick to something and understanding the bigger vision there.
Super, super. And we're running up on time right now. I think there might be some builders and founders there. Maybe even some that are thinking about coming into the Bitcoin fold. What's your advice or your inspirational words for them?
Like practically speaking, go read the Lean Startup and then try to ship an MVP of your idea, as quickly as humanly possible. That is like definitely the approach. I even see post Lean Startup world, a lot of people spending a long time to build things and then releasing something that doesn't ultimately map to what people want. So yeah, go just try things. It's like a lot of people talk about things. A lot of people will then dive into something and then spend like a year working before showing it. What you should do is just go create a fun project over the weekend and like tweet about it and see if anybody uses it.
Yeah, that's a quick and dirty way. Thank you for those words of inspiration. And because we still have a couple minutes left, I saw Snorkels. He just came up to ask. I will take that as last question and yeah, perfect. Snorkels.
Yo, what's up, brother? How are you today?
Hey, what's up, Snorkels? How's it going?
I'm good, not bad.
Well, I think it's been maybe like 6 months since I've talked to you on a space. Glad to hear you're doing well. Did you have like a question or anything, or like what are your thoughts on Ordinals these days?
Bro, you Bitcoin owners project?
Yeah. So Ord.io is an Ordinals Explorer. Like, so you can think of it like as like a web browser, but for content that's inscribed into Bitcoin.
Is a good, bro. Is a good man. Good luck. I love you, man.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So that's a great way to end this. How do people reach out to you and learn more?
My DMs are open. Yeah.
Wonderful. And thanks so much again for taking the time out and sharing your founder's journey into Bitcoin. I hope Leonidas' this story inspired many of you out there to come and build on Bitcoin. It's still early. It's early days right now. But there are more and more people coming from Ethereum space into the Bitcoin space, and if you're one of them, rest assured you are very competitive. Your knowledge that you gained, just like how Leonidas took the knowledge he has from Ethereum and bring it to Bitcoin, it does give you a very big advantage. So if you guys are on the fence, wait no longer, just jump in. If you want to do it the quick and dirty way, like Leonidas said, pick up a book of the Lean Startup and try to ship something this weekend. If you want an awesome community, and if you want to go through a gauntlet and be challenged for 3 months and build an investment ready startup, sign up to the Bitcoin Startup Lab. Give Leo a follow, give me a follow, and that comes to a conclusion. Our 16th episode for Who's Who in Bitcoin Innovation 2023. And thanks again, Leonidas, for your contribution on Sattributes Ord.io, and also, of course, keeping the Ordinal show going for so long. That definitely has saved me a lot of time just going there to check out what's the newest stuff happening, right? And as a compliment to that, everyone, we're creating the Bitcoin Innovation shows on Thursday. And if you're a founder and you want to learn more about what pre-seed investors look for, we also create a Friday show. It's called Bitcoin Money Fridays, where we usually invite 1 to 2 investors, pre-seed investors, and/or accelerators to come talk about what they look for. So if you're looking to go down that route, that service is also a public service, and hopefully that helps some people out. Thanks again, Leonidas, for joining. And thank you.
Dude, thank you. Like, I appreciate everything you do for this ecosystem as well. Like, supporting entrepreneurs is an incredibly important aspect of this, and the accelerator, the hackathon, the Twitter Spaces, like everything is this is super important for kind of changing the narrative and culture on Bitcoin. We need more people like you.
Yeah, let's continue working together. It's it's an honor to hear you say that. And it does bring a lot of happiness, warms my heart up. And also thank you for your staunch support, being a judge at the hackathon, being a speaker for our students, being a mentor. So thank you again for your contribution all around. Thank you, Leo. And thank the audience.
Awesome.
Yes. Awesome. Take care, everyone. Until next time.
Awesome.